There are many definitions of sustainability. Here at Sembcorp, sustainability is safeguarding the future. To us, that future is bright. We harness the power of the sun and wind, design low-carbon sustainable solutions for green urban cities, and lay the foundation for generations to come. Sustainability is innovation, challenging the norms and leading disruption. We innovate to solve complex global problems. We use our experiences to create opportunities from challenges. Sustainability is about the communities. We care for the communities and aim to improve their quality of life. We forge strong partnerships and leverage our platforms in the region to deliver sustainable solutions. Our success is founded upon the trust from the communities we serve. Sustainability is about our people. Our success is bolstered by the strength and energy of one Sembcorp team, a team that can thrive in the current and future world. Sustainability is not just a catchphrase. To us, sustainability is our business.
Hello and welcome to the UNESCAP Thinktank Roundtable on Sustainable Connectivity in Asia Pacific, Challenges and Opportunities for Cross-Border Power System Connectivity. My name is Matthew Wittenstein. I am the Section Chief for Energy Connectivity at UNESCAP, the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific. We have a really great set of speakers today. To give them enough time to give their presentations, I'll just start with a quick presentation of my own to set the scene a little bit and hopefully give us a sense of direction for this roundtable. Next slide, please. So first I wanted to start just by talking in general sense of why does power system connectivity matter? It's a topic that we care a lot about at UNESCAP. It's a topic our member states ask us to work with them on quite often. There are three main drivers for power system connectivity, at least in our view. One is economics. Power system connectivity across borders can give you access to lower cost resources. It gives you the potential to export power across your borders and therefore earn export revenues. It also enables the potential for increased economies of scale for investments. You can build projects larger if you can export some of the power than you could if they're only serving domestic demand. There are also security benefits to power system connectivity. For example, you don't need as much capacity on standby domestically to be available in case of an outage if you can also rely on your neighbors and share your generation with them. It also increases resource diversity. So just having more diverse resources available is already going to increase security of your system by ensuring that if you lose one type of generator, you have others to replace them with. And there are opportunities to improve sustainability. You can access regions with higher renewable energy potential than your own country might have, or you might be able to tap into domestically. And it enables better integration of renewable energy through what we call resource smoothing, just taking advantage of natural variations in wind and solar. When the wind is not blowing where I am, it may well be blowing across a border. And these benefits, I should say, are widely recognized. And just for example, in the European Union, they have set explicit targets for interconnection, 15% across the border for each country by 2030, and also have established what are called grants for projects of common interest, which are basically financial incentives to build projects that might have benefits that spill across borders, and so which any individual country might have trouble justifying on their own. In the United States, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory just released a study looking at the potential for more integration across states and regions within the United States, and found that across a range of scenarios, the benefits almost invariably outweighed the cost, leading to benefit cost ratios ranging from as low as 1.2 to as high as 2.5, depending on the scenario. And closely noting that the more renewable energy potential there was used in these scenarios, the better interconnections are able to serve the economic and security needs of the country. And finally, in Africa, there are already multiple regional power pools. And now in the continent, they're developing a continental power system master plan in collaboration with IRENA and the International Atomic Energy Agency. Next slide. What about in Asia? Well, in fact, there are many power system connectivities across our region. Here, I'm just highlighting 4 subregions and some of the initiatives in each of them. In Southeast Asia, we have the ASEAN Power Grid, which you'll hear about in just a few moments. In South Asia, there are many initiatives, but most, probably one of the biggest is one that's supported by the USAID called SARI-EI, South Asia Regional Initiative for Energy Integration. In Central Asia, you have a number of initiatives as well, including one supported by ADB called CAREC and another USAID initiative on regional energy markets called CAREM. And in Northeast Asia, we have less integration at the sub-regional level among all the countries. We still have a number of notable initiatives, including, for example, ADB's work with Mongolia on what they call NAPSI to show how Mongolia could develop wind and solar resources and then export those to their neighbors. But that said, while there are many cross-border initiatives, connectivity initiatives in Asia, progress compared to other regions is generally more limited. Mostly we're seeing just bilateral interconnections, and we don't see regional power pools like you have in Africa, Europe, or North America. Next slide. So at UNESCAP, we're trying to work across the region to support more sustainable connectivity. And in fact, earlier this year, our member states endorsed a regional roadmap on power system connectivity in Asia. This roadmap contains a vision for integration, a set of principles integration should follow, and 9 strategies to enable increased sustainable connectivity. Broadly speaking, you can break these strategies down into 4 categories. Some of them focus on planning. Some of them focus on financing and development of cross-border infrastructure. Some of them focus on the operational issues. Once you have the transmission in place, how do you operate them securely and efficiently? And then there are some cross-cutting issues, I should say, or strategies, like building trust and political consensus, developing appropriate intergovernmental agreements, capacity building, and in particular, ensuring coherence of connectivity with the Sustainable Development Goals. And we've used this roadmap as sort of a template for the discussion today. We're going to talk about planning. We'll talk a little bit about financing and development as well, and somewhat on operations, although less so. And we'll touch a bit on cross-cutting issues, in particular that last one, how we ensure that when connectivity initiatives are developed, they improve sustainability, reduce the carbon emissions, increase the share of renewable energy integration into systems, and not the other way around. Next slide. Finally, I just wanted to talk just for a moment about how UNESCAP works as an institution, what we're trying to do. Broadly speaking, UNESCAP functions across 3 dimensions when it comes to working on connectivity. One is on capacity building. So for example, we're doing trainings for regulators and utilities in Southeast Asia, and soon more trainings for regulators in South Asia, as well as also the Pacific Islands. I didn't mention them, but there we are talking more about what connectivity looks like in a context where cross-border power system connectivity doesn't make as much sense. What's the role of hydrogen, ammonia, other fuels? How can you integrate smaller microgrid systems, distribution systems, et cetera? So we are working in that region as well. We're also doing a capacity building effort looking at how to develop more cross-border interconnectors in Northeast Asia, planned for next year. We do analysis, of course, as well. We have a number of papers here. I've just highlighted one. This year, we're working on, and next year as well, a green power corridor roadmap for Northeast Asia, linked to that capacity building effort I just mentioned. It's really about how to push forward an integrated power system in Northeast Asia that is consistent with national policy goals, but also improves power system sustainability in that region. And then finally, we convene stakeholders. And this is perhaps one of our strongest roles. We have 2 initiatives here I'd like to highlight. One is our expert working group on energy connectivity, which brings together experts from all of our member states and across the world to help guide the UNESCAP work program on connectivity. And a new initiative being launched next week at the COP26, the Green Grids Initiative, One Sun, One World, One Grid, and launched in partnership between the UK, Indian government, France, and a few others. At UNESCAP, we are supporting the Asia Pacific Working Group of that initiative. I'm also happy to say that ADB and ASEAN Center for Energy are also members of that, as well as a few others. So with that, I'd like to just say thank you for your time and attention. I think as I said, we have a really great program today, and I don't want to take any more time away from the speakers than is absolutely necessary. We also have an excellent moderator who I'd like to introduce now. Mika Obayashi is the director for the Renewable Energy Institute in Japan. Mika is a real expert on this topic. The Institute has done tremendous work looking at integration across Asia and Northeast Asia in particular, and I think should really do a great job of guiding our conversation today. Mika, I'm happy to turn the floor to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to moderate today's roundtable on sustainable connectivity in Asia Pacific, challenges and opportunities for cross-border power system connectivity. As I introduced, I'm a moderator for today's session, Mika Obayashi, director at Renewable Energy Institute based in Japan. We are an advocacy think tank focusing on renewables deployment and decarbonization in Asia. And one of our main research topics is the feasibility of ASEAN Interconnection, Asia Supergrid project. As the title indicated, the purpose of this session is to discuss the opportunity of cross-border connectivity in Asia. Asia is the fastest growing region in the world and then accounts for over 40% of global carbon dioxide emissions. It is a major contributor to the climate crisis, while at the same time has vulnerable countries that will be heavily affected by its effects. And interconnected grid infrastructure unlocks the enormous potential of renewables in the region. As we go through the agenda, please feel free to put your questions to the speakers in the chat box. The first session will focus on preparing for an integrated future, examples of regional power system planning with Beni Suryadi, manager at the ASEAN Center for Energy, providing an update on regional power system planning in Southeast Asia, in particular about the AIMS third, which was recently completed. Mr. Suryadi, the floor and this virtual space is yours.
Thank you very much, Mika. A very good morning from Jakarta. A warm greeting to all of you who are joining with us today. I'm excited to join this important discussion. Thank you very much to UNESCAP for inviting me, representing the ASEAN Center for Energy, to share the latest development on the regional initiative on the electricity connectivity in the Southeast Asia region, or called as the ASEAN Power Grid. The work on the ASEAN Power Grid is a collaborative work where we support the heads of the ASEAN Power Utilities and Authorities, or HAPUA, a group of national electricity and or utilities company or institution in driving the APG initiative to ensure regional energy security. Next slide, please. Energy resource in ASEAN region as a whole are rich in number and in various forms, ranging from the fossil fuels to large potential in renewable energy, particularly on the solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal, although these are distributed unevenly. The availability of this vast energy resource could potentially offer opportunity for ASEAN to jointly develop a borderless electricity industry, leading to the development of the ASEAN Interconnection projects. Pooling of electrical energy, as mentioned by Matthew before, by means of interconnecting the various independent power systems through transmission network between the neighboring countries, which could lead to the cross-border power interchange, is therefore an effective way that can be realized to exploit and optimize the energy resource of the countries involved wisely within the provision allowed in the interconnection agreement. So against this background, the head of the state government ASEAN called for the establishment of the electricity interconnecting agreement within the ASEAN through the ASEAN Power Grid back in 1997. The APG is envisioned to serve towards ensuring regional energy security while promoting efficient use and sharing of the energy resource. Considering the wide range characteristic of each country in the region, the APG is being implemented in a stepwise approach strategy. So it started with a cross-border bilateral term, then gradually expanding to the sub-regional basis, and finally aim for a total integrated Southeast ASEAN power grid system. This approach was formulated under the regional grouping on the cross-border electricity, or what we call the ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan study. Next slide, please. As mentioned earlier, the grid interconnection are initiated in a bilateral basis. And due to the fact that all the grids are not situated on the same peninsula, it was instituted to divide them into three major groups: Upper West System, Lower West System, and the East System. So much different with EU, I think, or Africa. The geographical situation is indeed a big challenge for regional interconnection. So through the AIMS-3 studies, we assess the feasibility of the so-called generic candidate of the cross-border link based on the least cost criteria. So the method compare a particular generic ASEAN power grid cross-border candidate link or interconnection against the long-term optimal power system addition of the generating capacity and transmission lines without the cross-border link. So as you can see in the screen, the APG interconnection, the latest map, there are indication of 16 interconnection by at least around 27 actual and proposed cross-border links. And as of the September 2021, there is around 7,000 megawatt cross-border interconnection. So it's a small number if we compare to the EU or other regional interconnectivities. But considering the different characteristics of each country in the region and complexity in the arrangement, allow me to call it as a significant achievement. Next slide, please. So pursuing more multilateral integrations to the ASEAN mooted the idea of the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore power integration projects. So LTMS PIP serve as pathfinders to complement the existing effort toward realizing the ASEAN power grid and the ASEAN economic community by creating opportunity for electricity trading beyond neighboring countries, and expected to help identify and resolve issues affecting cross-border electricity trading in the region. This is what also being mentioned by Matthew in the remarks earlier. A series of meetings and discussion that have taken place at technical level up to the ministerial level to chart the path toward realization of the LTMS PIP. And in 2019, technical task studies recommended the projects to be implemented in two phases, as you can see in the screen. So in 2017, there was a historic signing of the energy purchase willing agreement during the minister meeting. So this agreement is kind of the first multilateral electricity transaction among the ASEAN member states that targets to advance the electricity trade in the region under the ASEAN power grids. The signing is among Laos, Thailand, and Malaysia in implement the phase one of these projects, and it enables the purchase up to 100 megawatt electricity from Laos to Malaysia using Thailand existing transmission grids. And build upon the success agreement back in 2019, the three countries agreed to continue beyond original period, increase the power transfer up to 300 megawatt, allow multi-direction flow, adopt the firm power purchase, as well as expand the cooperation to include the other countries. As of December 2020, there were around 31 gigawatt hours electricity was being traded. And moving forward, at the recent minister meeting, 4 countries, now including Singapore, reaffirmed their commitment to advance the multilateral cost power trading. So where we see that there is a plan for up to 100 megawatt electricity power trade from Laos to Singapore via Thailand and Malaysia using existing interconnection from 2020 to 2023. Next slide, please. So aspiring for more integration, and also one of the efforts to accelerate the regional energy transition by having more renewable energy penetration, ASEAN updates its study under the ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan 3 that was adopted at the recent ASEAN Minister on Energy meetings. So this study, the third person embodies ASEAN directive to explore the feasibility of multilateral electricity trading in the region to enhance grid resilience and modernization to provide affordable and resilient electricity supply, as well as to accommodate higher share of renewable energy into the grids. So these studies explore 4 scenarios: best scenario, optimum renewable energy scenario, ASEAN regional target scenario, and also the possibility for having high renewable energy scenario. The exploration were made to understand the impact of the selected scenario on the consequence to the generation mix, renewable energy share, possible cross-border interconnection, overall investment cost, and also potential avoided emission. The main focus is comparing what the already country plan under the power development plan, which is mostly only considered the national resource, versus the optimization on the regional integration, where we could see the regional potential on the various renewable energy are being optimized. In our study, this is focusing on the solar and wind. Next slide, please. And there will be last of my last slide. And if you remember back the map on the interconnection that I saw earlier, this is a scheme where we identified the possible enhancement on the interconnection capacity between the countries in the region, be it at bilateral level or multilateral level. A bit different with the previous AIMS study, the latest studies on AIMS or AIM3 only consider the grid-to-grid interconnection because we aim for a regional integration. So dedicated transmission lines that are not connected to the system are excluded. But in this picture, you can see the numbers, the difference of the capacity that could be optimized in a various scenario. When clear, we could see that having higher renewable in the scenario will enhance the capacity of interconnectivity. So power flow and sources grid analysis has been shown that interconnection resulted from the capacity expansion or technically viable. Provided cross-border interconnection and strengthening of the grid at the national levels are implemented, then the ASEAN power grid will capable of the evacuating renewable energy capacity to achieve our regional target on renewable energy. And all of this can be achieved at the same cost as what being planned today. So AIMS3 conclude that the proposed interconnection are technically viable and will be capable of accommodating the higher share of renewable energy. And in the long term, with the interplay between build cost and production cost, the total cost from the perspective of net present value to have almost doubling our interconnection capacity and also renewable capacity compared to the current national plan is relatively at the same cost at around 770 billion USD. So I stop here and happy to have a follow-up discussion on the topic. Thank you, Mika.
Thank you very much, Benny, for your great presentation. I have No question until now. So maybe that we will discuss at the panelist discussion that if there's some questions comes up. The second session will focus on the topic of financing cross-border infrastructure, making the case for connectivity. We have two speakers in this session. And then as I said before that it is really appreciated that to put your questions to speakers in the chat box. And first, we are delighted to welcome Frederick Asrine, Head of Program Team at the Multilateral Cooperation Center for Development Finance. Mr. Asrine, thank you very much for joining us. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I cannot see, here's my slide. Yes, thank you for the introduction. So I'm Frédéric Asseline. I have joined the Multilateral Cooperation Center for Development Finance, MCDF, in Beijing just about 2 months ago. The initiative that I would like to introduce today, the MCDF, is also relatively new. So I will go through its organizational structure, its objectives, and the modalities through which we propose to engage with client countries. First slide, please. You go, yeah. So the objective of the MCDF is to provide assistance to client countries in adopting high quality standards in connectivity infrastructure investments. These standards that we promote are the standards of the established IFIs, international financing institutions, the large multilateral development banks. These standards have to do with social and environmental frameworks, enhanced such frameworks. Also standards of debt sustainability, of cross-border investments, of climate-aligned infrastructure, a reference made there to the taxonomies, the prevailing taxonomies for green finance. All these sets of standards that are promoted through the large MDBs that we do propose to bring to countries in association with new partners being defined as SOEs or large policy banks or other private players who could co-finance through the implementing partners of the MCDF connectivity investments in developing countries. The important salient feature of the MCDF, it's the connectivity aspect. We would not support just one-off infrastructure investments that do not have a connectivity dimension, be it cross-border or ICT type of connectivity, or trade finance facilitation through regional groups. We focus on partnerships and on promoting high quality for high standards. So we are promoting the G20 quality infrastructure standards. The way really the MCDF works is for the benefits of client countries through the projects brought to us by implementing partners. So we do have a system to accredit implementing partners. These implementing partners can be large MDBs, multilateral development banks, or they could be international financing institutions beyond the established large MDBs. Currently, we have one implementing partner as of this past summer. It's the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. We are working on adding a couple within the next 6 months and another 3 during the course of next year as per our stated work plan and objectives. We are set up as a multilateral team in Beijing. Our secretariat is in Beijing, hosted by the administrator of the MCDF, who is also the AIIB. So the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is the host of the secretariat, the administrator for the MCDF, but it is also our first implementing partner. So this means that the first projects that we will support will be through projects proposed to us by the teams, investment teams of the AIIB. This is a global initiative. We're not just focused on Asia, so we'll be looking to adding implementing partners from other continents and regions, in Africa, in Latin America. We will be working in the first instance in Asia through the AIB, but AIB also has investments beyond Asia. And as we add IPs, implementing partners in other regions, we will support the objectives and mission of the MCDF globally. We have a governance committee on which sits the currently 6 countries who are members of the MCDF and who provide funding for the MCDF. We currently have about 180 million in funding available. These countries include China, they include Hungary, Egypt, Cambodia, the Philippines, and others. We have a coordination committee that is providing a strategic guidance to the proposed activities of the MCDF, and this committee includes, beyond the governance committee, members of the international financing institutions community and a number of observers to provide the strategic advice. We're led by a CEO who is Mr. Wang Zhongjing. Next slide. So we can support 3 types of activities: information sharing, capacity building, and project preparation support. The share of funding that would go notionally to these 3 different types of activities is provided in the pie: 5% for information, about 20% for capacity building, and the bulk of our support would go to project preparation, because with an underlying investment project brought to us by an implementing partner, this is where we would get the most traction. So for instance, AIB would bring a investment project to the MCDF, who would help prepare a feasibility study for the projects, help review proposed advanced, enhanced social and environmental standards, help review the adoption of a green investment framework. And in so doing, the implementing partner could also co-finance or consider co-financing with a large policy bank or other private sector or SOE partner, who in so doing, in implementing the project, would adopt the highest standards that are promoted by the MCDF. We can prepare projects on sovereign side, but we can also do PPP or private sector projects. So in this sense, we're a little bit broader in the mandate than other global infrastructure facilities like the GIF, the Global Infrastructure Facility, joined by most of the MDBs, that has a secretariat in Washington, DC, with the World Bank. Our eligible countries are all low and middle income countries, as classified by the World Bank. And these must be countries, obviously, who have a program or lending or grant program with our accredited implementing partners. We do not support countries directly. The support is through an implementing partner who will be executing the activities in the country, activities funded by the MCDF. There is no particular priority in terms of regions or sub-regions. All regions are eligible. Thank you. Next slide. A little bit of detailed on the different types of activities, what we mean by information sharing. We have several teams at the MCDF, a program team that I lead, basically in charge of shaping potential pipelines for program project support. We have a governance team in charge of the coordination with the members of the MCDF and on the institutional side with the implementing partners. And we have a platform team who is coordinating the information and knowledge sharing events, training activities, and is setting up a digital collaboration platform called Jigsaw, in addition to a website that is in the final stages of launching within a month from now. The Jigsaw is going to be a large database of infrastructure projects, and we'll be looking at matching these opportunities with potential investments. Jigsaw will be launched also later in the year. We're in addition developing a number of events, training, workshops with our implementing partners, with other stakeholders. We're holding events in the coming month in Egypt with cooperation partners there at the African Development Bank, in CAREC in Central Asia. We're holding another event also in November with the Islamic Development Bank. and other stakeholders. In so doing, we want to promote cooperation, collaboration, identify priority connectivity projects. We do gap analysis by country, by region, and identify where we can bring the most value. Next slide. Capacity building is also an important aspect of the value proposition of the MCDF. We are working there through implementing partners in collaboration with our new potential partners in beneficiary countries. So an implementing partner, again, could be the AIB, with a new partner who could be a large policy bank in China. And we would then develop either national or regional capacity building projects, programs for the adoption of higher standards, social, environmental, and other key standards that I've described before as they relate to debt sustainability, trade finance, or Paris-aligned, climate-aligned infrastructure projects. They all, however, need to be connectivity projects. Next. So project preparation support, we have two types. We can finance a pre-concept or a full feasibility study. If the project is aligned with the objectives, the budget can be quite sizable. Our priority sectors include transport and logistics, energy, telecommunication, and water. And as I said earlier, this can support public operations or private sector. It can support the construction of new infrastructure or the expansion and or upgrading of existing infrastructure. It could also support so-called soft infrastructure to improve connectivity in ICT project. Next. This is just a quick snapshot of how we're organized. As I said, we have a governing committee approving the projects, representing the member countries. We have a coordination committee who is providing strategic advice with members of the international finance community, MDBs, IFIs, other countries' observers on this committee. They provide strategic advice to our CEO, to the Secretariat, hosted in Beijing by the administrator, who is the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank in Beijing. And then we develop activities proposed by the implementing partners, of which for now, the AIB. In the future, we're looking at accrediting many more, so as to work globally in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, in Europe, in Central Asia, to support activities in information sharing, capacity building, and project preparation for the promotion of high standards, G20 quality infrastructure standards, in cooperation with new partners. New partners could be, as I mentioned, policy banks. They could be private sector. They could be SOEs. Next. So that is it for a quick introduction. As I said, we're new. We've just started operations this summer. We've accredited our first implementing partner, AIB, this summer. We're looking at approving the first projects before the end of the year. And we're building momentum, we're building teams, we're building our global presence. And I'm looking forward to the discussion and to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Asrine, for your great presentation. It looks like that no questions that are coming up, but I'm not sure that if you have any questions that it's really appreciated, or maybe that we go straight to the next speaker. It seems that Mr. Pradeep, that who was scheduled to be the next speaker, is not able to attend yet. So I would like to go ahead with another excellent speaker, Ms. Barely Lee, Head of Corporate Development for Singapore and Southeast Asia at Sembcorp Industries. Ms. Lee, this space is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Nika. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for waking up and tuning into this roundtable. So I'm Valerie. I'm head of corporate development at Singapore and Southeast Asia at Sembcorp Industries. And we are really proud and privileged to be the sponsors for this Thinktank roundtable, where we can gather great minds in the region and globally to actually engage on this platform, on this very meaningful platform, to share ideas and thoughts of the subject matters that we are speaking today. So if I could go on to the next slide, please. Just a really short introduction. I promised to share 2 slides next, about the company I work in. So this is Sembcorp Industries at a glance. We are 49.5% owned by Temasek and listed on SGX. There are 3 business pillars that we are really focused on now. The first being renewable energy, second, conventional energy, and the third is integrated urban solutions, which is a mix of water solutions and urban development projects that we have had over the years. We operate across 11 countries, as far away as United Kingdom, where we operate one of the largest energy storage fleets there. And obviously our major markets you can see marked out here is China, India, and obviously our hometown, Singapore. If you could go on the next slide. So I know this topic is about energy connectivity. So just a little on what Sembcorp has kind of dabbled in the past 20 years. So the first energy transition we like to say is really, especially in Singapore, the transition from fuel oil to natural gas. And I know this roundtable is really, the focus is really on electricity imports and electricity connectivity. But there's this part about gas pipelines that we too can think about when we discuss the issues on energy connectivity, which also has kind of the same issues and challenges on expanding. So at Sembcorp, in the late 90s, we actually signed a contract with Indonesia, and since then we have purchased $20 billion worth of natural gas from the West Natuna fields to supply the downstream customers in Singapore. So that's just one example of energy imports of it in the natural gas form, as opposed to electricity electrons. And recently, just announced on Monday, we actually signed a joint development agreement with Suryajan and PLN Batam, Indonesian partners, to kind of explore integrated solar and energy storage facility in the Batam region, amounting to about 1 gigawatt peak. Next slide, please. So I would kind of focus my discussions today a little bit more in the region that we're in ASEAN. So you can see I kind of tabulated this and I kind of put all the information together. So different strokes for different folks. And the point I'm trying to make here is that, we have all these ASEAN member countries, and all of us are at different stages of developing our electricity market. Some of us are fully liberalized. Some of us are trying to increase our electrification rate, but one thing that is common, I think, among all, is that we all have sustainability goals. We all have renewable energy goals kind of in our national plans. But you can see that the timelines that we all have are kind of different. So some have it, with the end goal of 2025 and nothing beyond that. And some go as far out to, let's see here, 2035 or 2040 even. And it's just, we are all under different circumstances, under different development stage. So this kind of come into a very big play when we talk about regional connectivity. Because some countries might have to take care of the needs within their own country first before thinking about exporting to others. Next slide, please. So again, I'm drilling down from ASEAN as a region into Singapore. I'm not too sure, the audience on this platform, if you are familiar with the very famous concept that our Energy Market Authority has kind of pitched like 2 or 3 years ago. It's the Singapore's 4 energy switches, and you can see the 4th switch here in the slide pack. The first is natural gas, second, solar, third, regional imports, and the fourth, low carbon alternatives. And you can see for natural gas, it's still considered a very key fuel source in Singapore. And solar, obviously, this is the up and coming topic. In the last 2 years, it has been a very popular, development in the country, where companies like my company, Sembcorp, and lots of competitors all are actually building rooftop solar panels and floating solar farms. And this is really to achieve our nation's goal of at least 2 gigawatt peak of solar energy by 2030. And the third one is the interesting one. So I think the third and a very important switch that the government has identified in Singapore is regional imports. And so there's this and we have started by having trials on power imports, or rather announcing trials on power imports and cross-border trade. The fourth one, a little bit longer on the horizon, in time horizon, is low carbon alternatives. So technologies like hydrogen and carbon capture. So if you could go on to the next slide, please. So again, I went from ASEAN and I drilled into a country, and now I go into more of a corporate role. In Sembcorp, our energy goal really is to quadruple the gross installed capacity of renewables from our 2020 capacity levels. And our geographical focus is on Southeast Asia, China, and India. And I'm saying this because, regional sustainability targets and national sustainability targets really do drive what is going on the corporate level, on the company level, to really kind of push corporates and motivate corporates to actually hit the sustainability goals of the regions and the markets that they operate in. Next slide, please. So, this slide looks familiar. Pak Suyadi, thank you. I think the source, I credited the source to ASEAN Center for Energy. And I really think this map is so fascinating. If you read up about the APG, it's a 28 gigawatt ambition, and was mooted in 1997 in Kuala Lumpur. But since then, it has been a good 20 plus years, and only 8 gigawatt achieved. But it's not, yes, things have moved a bit slow, but you can see that it's exciting times ahead of us. There's so much potential. And you can see all the status in some of the lines that says to be confirmed. So I think it's going to be quite an exciting journey ahead for APG, and I guess more will come, especially with the renewable energy agenda on top of everyone's minds, from governments all the way to the corporates and to consumers. Next slide, please. So again, these are just studies, publicly available, alluding to a more active ASEAN power grid in the future, driven by renewable energy sources and geographical demand sinks. So, I saw data from the ASEAN Interconnection master plan study, some simulations there, and over at the Asia Pacific Energy Research Center, where you can see the graph showing all the interconnection and the volumes that can be achieved by them. And it looks like the northern and southern connections will have the most active trade. And the energy flow in the region would move from, as you can see, the usual suspects, the renewable energy sources like, the ones big on hydropower, Laos, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Indonesia, of course, and flowing towards countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, and Vietnam, where the demand sink is in the region. Next slide, please. So I guess I know this topic is about the APAC region, but I guess everyone knows that the best in class, one of the most successful power market has been around for a long time and was really efficient in starting up was the Nordic power market, where Finland, Sweden, Denmark is. And you can see, and this source is from Wood Mackenzie, and if you go read their report, it's a very fascinating data, lots of data on the energy flows between each country, and also outside of the entire Nordic pool into countries like you can see United Kingdom and Germany. So I guess that's where all of us in the other parts of the world could kind of aim and vision towards. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, and I was putting my thoughts together. I bring you to one of this net that we like to use in our kind of our pitch deck. So we call this a Centers of Excellence, and you can see the different nodes throughout the world that we operate in. We are good at the energy storage systems. Capabilities are all cited in the UK. For wind, it's in India. For our urban development, it's in Vietnam. For water solutions, in China. And in Singapore, it's our solar capabilities. They're all housed in this, what we call the COEs. And to me, I felt like this was kind of a, one of the good examples of how a regional connectivity of talents and capabilities are all driven by sustainability goals. And this can be translated into a regional power grid. And what are some of the secret ingredients to make it successful? I guess the most important thing is really a united sustainability goal. You can see we have made very good progress in ASEAN, especially because at least every country now has a renewable energy target, whether it's expressed in terms of capacity, whether it's expressed in terms of total primary energy supply. Most importantly, everyone is quite deep focused on achieving their own sustainability goals in their own way and having an ASEAN level 1. The second one, obviously, with so many countries in the region and globally, it's really about the political will, and political will doesn't just mean like between governments. Obviously, that would really help, but it's also about the will among corporates commercially to actually make it work and to actually pull together a collaboration that will allow the regional connectivity to improve in the region. The third one I would say is techno-commercial capabilities. When we talk about regional connectivity, people always kind of misunderstand it, like, it's just pulling lines across and stuff. That you need to know the energy market structure of each country really well to know what really kind of motivates the two countries to work together and to actually want to embark on a bilateral or a cross-border trade in order to kind of pull off such a mega project. And of course, besides that, not forgetting the technology part of it, which is the substations, the cables. How do you actually pull this off? Lots of technical skill sets needed. So both needs to be married together in order for successful collaboration to take place. The fourth point, probably not as important, but market liberalization really do help because it will create a little bit more of a wiggle room for more creative commercial structures to be in place, such that all these contracts work out between among all the countries. And obviously access to sustainable funding sources, which speaker before me obviously covered. So I guess these are just my concluding thoughts on the topic today. And I guess more discussion can take place during the panel session. So thank you, everyone. And Mika, back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Lee, for your excellent presentation. Okay, the third session will be on the topic of energy connectivity and its alignment with sustainability goals. The speaker is Dr. Fan Han, Deputy Director General at the GI Research Institute under the Global Energy Interconnection Development and Cooperation Organization. Actually, that our organization, Renewable Energy Institute, one of the members of this organization, GEIDOCO. Dr. Wan, please go ahead. You have the space.
Okay, thank you, Mika. Good morning, everyone. It's my great pleasure to participate in this meeting, and thank you for the invitation and also well organization. As we all know, accelerating the clean energy transition is a common goal for all countries in Asia Pacific region. We are facing the very similar situation, and it's key to solve the climate change and ensuring sustainable economic and social development. Actually, in Asia area, we affected by climate change a lot. I will show some numbers later. Next page, please. Well, of course, the electricity is the main force for the transition because a lot of fossil fuel has been used, and the fully used cross-border interconnection is the fundamental guarantee. A lot of experts in this meeting already mentioned that, and also is need to strengthen the cooperation among countries and focus on the driving rule of the innovation and make full use of existing advanced technology. Why I say that? Because for some kinds of carbon emission reduction technologies such as CCS or BECCS, they are still under a high cost situation with very urgent climate and carbon reduction goal. Probably we don't have too many time to wait for their mature. So that's why I said, to fully use of existing advanced technologies. I've used a very short time to brief introduce about the Global Energy Interconnection Development and Cooperation Organization, or called GEDICO. We are a non-governmental, non-profit international organization, and we're committed to promoting the low carbon transition and the electricity interconnection to achieve innovation, coordinated and sustainable development for the whole society. We did a lot of research to support this goal. We already released a number of researches or books. You can see some cover pages in here. Actually, we have already published about 50 books in the energy sector, include the research on the ASEAN renewable energy development and investment. We built up a very comprehensive platform with plenty of the global climate, geographical numbers, data to analysis the renewable resources in terms of economic and technical investment perspective. And also we have a series of publication on the research and outlook series, including the ASEAN Energy Interconnection. And we did a lot of comprehensive scenario simulation for the global carbon neutrality, as well as a couple of books talk about technology. For example, here is the development and the perspective of the ultra high voltage transmission technology. So the goal is to taking full account of regions' characteristics and the current situation, development goals, and make full use of emerging technologies. Next page, please. Well, there are these two pages shows the wind and solar resources from our calculation. We all see, because the industry and also the developing economic, the energy structure now in Asia is still dominated by the fossil fuel. And it leads to a very severe energy security issue. Let me show you one example. For example, the South Asia, East Asia, and Southeast Asia, they are short in oil and natural gas resources. However, in 2017, the oil and the gas used in this area accounting for 35% and 20% of global total. So with the economic development continuing and the population growing in this area, if we continue use this energy scheme, we'll have more needs, and the energy security issue will become worsened. On the other hand, as I mentioned, we are facing tremendous pressure to address climate change, mainly caused by the fossil fuel utilization. From 1990 to 2017, the CO2 emission from fossil fuel combustion in China increased from 5.7 billion tons to 17.5 billion tons. It's almost triple the number. And at the same time, it's we have heavily affected by those climate disasters. For example, from 1998 to 2017, a counted number for this is 3.7 billion people in Asia. We have a lot of coast islands. It's this ranking first in all the continents. So I will introduce a little bit about the ASEAN Energy Interconnection proposed by GEDICO later. It's focused on the clean energy development, actively promotes electricity energy substitution and improves electrification levels, supported by ultra high voltage technology, a clean, low carbon and economic efficient, as well as the electric-centered modern energy system will be built, and also can strengthen the interconnection of power grid in this region. So it has very strong base to have this concept, the ASEAN Energy Interconnection. First of all, is we have a very, very good situation in terms of renewable energy resources. And if we have the good way to use, it can be in a very low cost. So you see these two pictures, I would say, give you some numbers, hydro, for the hydro resources, as Ms. Lee just mentioned, China has Asia has about 47.2% of global potential. And in terms of wind energy, based on our calculation, this number is 28.4% of the total. And with the technical potential installed capacity about 37.3 kilowatt. If we use them fully, this capacity can generate the electricity for 7 times larger than the current annual power consumption. In here, I'm not use the resource capacity. I already use technical installed capacity. Means based on the geographical situation, based on the the location and with the good cost situation, it can be done. And also we calculate there is a factor called LCOE, is average levelized cost of energy. For Asia, for centralized wind power development, we calculate that the cost can be low as 2.65 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour. And also for the solar energy, Asia has about 23% of the load total potential. And with the technical potential installed capacity about 606 kilowatt. So this number is even bigger. If we use them fully, it can generate about 80 times larger than the current annual power consumption in Asia area. The LCOE in Asia can be low as the 1.94 to 3.38 cents per kilowatt hour if we can make fully use and fully allocated. And the other thing is, you will see the different color in these two pictures. We have the renewable energy resources has a very strong complementary. Ms. Lee mentioned this idea also, because the Asian continent spans tropical temperature and cold zones with many types of climate, topography, and other natural conditions, creating a diversity of clean energy step. I'm just use solar as a very quick example. For example, the solar energy resource rich areas such as West Asia, Central Asia, and Northwest Asia, Northwest China span multiple time zones, and there are certain complementary characteristics in the intraday time distribution of PV power output. Of course, the similar feature could be found for wind also. And for the different resources, in summer, wind speed is low and solar irradiation intensity is high, and hydro is in the period of abundant water. So the winter is upside features, but water, wind, and solar resources are complementary on the annual time scales. Next page, please. Second, we have a mature technology available. As I mentioned, ultra high voltage transmission. This technology refers to 1,000 kV and above for AC, and plus minus 800 kV and above for DC, which has a comprehensive advantage of long distance, high transmission capacity, and low cost, as well as the less land occupation. The ultra high voltage technology is a key to ensure the high proportion of clean energy development and a wide range of allocation for the renewable in Asia, which can realize the interconnection between national level and the regional level for multiple energy sources and a large-scale balance of clean energy generation over long distance and the intertemporal complementation and the interseasonal mutual benefits. Next page, please. The overall idea here shows a picture about the Asian energy interconnection is within the continental power flow in Asia is generally featured from transmission from west to east, north to south, and intercontinentally, Asia will transmit power to Europe, complement with Africa, hydro and the solar, with the receive power from Oceania. By 2050, the pattern of 5 regional interconnection grids will have been formed. In this plan, Asia will receive clean electricity from Arctic at an appropriate time and play an important role in the global energy interconnection backbone grid. Next page, please. Yeah, this is my last slides. I'm taking the Asian region as an example. Benny also introduced in 2018, GETICO together with Asian Energy Center and also ASCAP released and studied and released the reports called Research and Outlook on Asian Energy Interconnection, to see how the clean energy development and grid interconnection can be done in the Asian region. It was public released at the Northeast Asia and South Asia Energy Interconnection Development Forum organized by ASCAP. Well, the study concluded that by 2050, the high capacity ultra high voltage AC/DC backbone network will be formed with asynchronous interconnection with neighborhood regions to achieve cross-regional clean power mutual benefits. Based on this plan, in 2050, Asia's cross-regional power exchange can reach 10% of the total regional power generation capacity, which is about 100 gigawatt, and more than 15 times than the current level. And also, with this power grid plan, the power exchange between Asia and China and South Asia and Australia will be 26 gigawatt, 11 gigawatt, and 8 gigawatt, respectively. So Asia will become a regional power exchange hub and play more important role in a whole Asia area. Considering the time limit, I would stop my presentation here. All these researches already be published as book So if you are interested, please contact me, and I'm very happy to provide you for your reference. And thank you for listening. And I hope we can have a good discussion and well cooperation in this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Han. And thank you to all our speakers for their excellent presentation. From now, I would like to invite you all to take to the virtual stage for more interactive discussion. And let me start with actually that we have a very good question in our chat box, probably for the Benny and Ms. Lee. For the ASEAN power grid, aside from the harmonization of the technical capacity and resources of each Southeast Asian countries towards the regional grid, what are the plans to address the cohesiveness of the regulatory frameworks and policy incentives to ensure an effective and holistic sustainable energy transition at the regional level, and to address the non-economic issues like administrative hurdles, bureaucratic challenges, etc. at the national local level? Mr. Sliadi and Ms. Lee, how you can respond this question?
Thank you, Mika. Thank you very much for the question being addressed. I start by saying the experience from our work on the LTMS indicated there is actually no significant problems to develop the multilateral power grid under the ASEAN power grid. There is some issues, but something, on economic side, on the institutional side, on the policy side, but it's something that can be managed. But the question is also how it can be impacted each countries, as it will bring a different benefit or different impacts on each countries. If we skip the technical discussion, I think it's also sitting the joint study that we conduct with the IEA on the feasibility studies on multilateral power trade. There are 2 points that could be highlighted. One is on the political requirement. So this is include various agreement on certain foundation, not on technical, but also on the common working language as well. Where we could have a focus beyond what is being discussed and agree at technical levels. And another one is also institutional issue. This is something that still become homework for us at the regional levels. We do have what we call an ASEAN regulatory network that's discussing, exchange information between the countries on the regulatory in each particular countries. But this is yet to address the commonality at the regional level, so that could also solve the issue on the administrative arrangement or in the bureaucratic challenge, as it also involves political involvement or the institution that need to be involved as well, and also in the market arrangement, because we know that some countries having a regulated market while the other is not, and then exchange or interconnection between the countries that have a different market is something that can be also impacted at the economic level. There's just a lot of work that needs to be done, but we are trying to address this issue piece by piece. I stop at that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee.
Thanks, Mika, for the question, and Pak Siadi, that was a great answer to the question that was posed. But I guess one of the things that I would say is this is going to sound very generic, but there are lots of communication. So yes, there's a lot of challenges, regulatory framework, but sometimes it stems from really not understanding the origins of the host country or the market structures of both countries, or the challenges that they're in and the visions or ambitions that they're on. So it's really to have a more intimate knowledge of each other's needs and wants before actually engaging in lots of dialogues, whether it's with commercial entities, with local partners, grid partners, or the regulators. I believe that with lots of communication, this regulatory frameworks or any challenges that comes across to this regional connectivity, collaboration can be overcome. So I would say joint study groups, joint feasibility groups, do it with an end goal in mind, do it with a defined timeline, and do it with clear deliverables, and everyone can learn along the way and kind of hasten the process of expanding this grid and fortifying it. Thank you, Mika.
Okay, thank you very much. Matthew, do you have any follow-up comment on this topic?
Yeah, thanks. I think what Benny and Valerie said is already really great, and I won't add too much to that. Well, let's say from an ESCAP perspective, we always are trying to balance the benefits of energy connectivity with the right of any country to prioritize and its own national policies first. And there always has to be a balance between those two. You can look at the European experience and see there a real effort towards market harmonization first. And the energy market harmonization is just part of a broader market harmonization effort that's relevant to the European Union's context, right? It's all about how can we facilitate more cross-border trade, and a lot of that is about liberalization, creating competition, creating markets. That isn't necessarily the path forward that every country wants to take, and you don't have in other parts of the world the same sort of European Union-like structure to help support the harmonization. So a lot of what we're trying to do is show the balance that can be struck between increased connectivity and national sovereignty. And I think the core message is there isn't really a true trade-off that needs to be made. You can balance those things. But that said, once you begin to interconnect across your borders, you do need to think about what harmonization means. To some level, harmonization is still required. You can't simply build a transmission line and leave everything else unchanged and expect it to work properly and expect it to support cross-border trade. So some level of transformation is required, and what we're trying to do is find the appropriate level for each country and hopefully bring countries together. And to what Valerie said, to help them communicate with each other to express what their concerns are and to address those concerns. And that's really the key. We recognize that not all countries want to move forward at the same pace, but nevertheless feel that all countries could benefit from this. And to the point in the question about broader economic and social goals or implications of connectivity, that's a core element of what we're trying to do, and in particular through our work on green power corridors. So we're working now in Northeast Asia on that topic and hope to do that more generally in other parts of Asia. Really, that's about trying to balance sustainable development as a broader goal. So renewable energy is one piece of it, but also it's about air quality. It's about creating jobs. It's about access to electricity, but also quality of electricity access, and all the other sustainable development goals we're trying to achieve. How can connectivity be a tool to help support sustainable development and not just an end goal in and of itself? That's really, I think, where we're trying to focus our attention. I see lots of opportunities, and I think I see lots of stakeholders already here in this room who can support these efforts, and I'm happy to continue working with them. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. And then actually that I have another question. Maybe that this is for Dr. Han. What is the role of digitalization in creating a resilient and flexible cross-border power system? What is your thoughts and comment to this question? And if anyone can follow up, it's really appreciated.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch
Okay.
The first sentence. Could you repeat again?
What is the role of digitalization in creating a resilient and flexible cross-border power system? That is a question.
Yeah. Okay. And on answer this question, I also merged together with some of my comments on the first question. Well, actually, I do believe the interconnection is a critical thing, not only for energy, but also for the economy. You know, everything is coming from the industry revolution and also the economic development. That's the original need. So we need more power, need more electricity, need more different type of energies and resources. And based on this, you know, we have this transition requirement. It's not, you know, do the energy transition just for transition, it's for economic. That's my first point. The second point is, you know, in Asia area, you know, we have a diversity, very strong diversity on different countries, not only in the energy resources, but also on the, you know, economic development way. I think, you know, it's how to make economic development should be show very strong diversity issue. I'm using China as an example. We have a public policy called main function area. Give the different province has their different function based on their special characteristics. You know, so some are just for farmer, and some are for heavy industry, some for the, you know, the manufacturing. So based on this, they have a very very clear rule in the economic structure. So I do believe when make this interconnection, you know, will balancing as well as in a dynamic way for the Asian and as well as Asia area to create a new economic pattern to exchange resource as well as the economic benefits and you know, to create better performance, reach a win-win situation. So that's my answer and feedback on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then the probably the Frederick, that you may have some comments on the digitalization and the cross-border interconnection.
Yes, thank you. You know, as described, we work through implementing partners. These implementing partners are the large development banks. So you had two on the panel that couldn't join today. AIB, one of our IPs, and ADB were actually worked until last summer. So I'm a bit aware of, you know, their approach to interconnectivity also in the power sector, energy sector in the region. What we would do at MCDF is support their agenda as they come to us with connectivity projects. In the digitalization space, we support high ICT standards at MCDF. The AIB just issued, you know, we have, I mean, AIB has annual meetings this week in Beijing, and the report was just launched yesterday on green infrastructure and global value chains, making a case for relocalizing production at places where it makes sense in terms of alignment with green priorities. And in this sense, you know, China has done a lot, China among others, but China is quite advanced in the ICT space with the 5G technologies supporting, you know, enhanced infrastructure, transportation networks, relocalizing from the coast to inland, moving production upstream, moving production units to where they make the most sense also in terms of their carbon footprint. So the report is looking at how to expand this relocalization of production hubs globally and improving the carbon footprint of global value chains. This applies to food and it applies to energy, obviously, as energy is everywhere in these chains. It applies to food, to construction, to textile, to electronics, to automotive freight, to fast-moving consumer goods, moving to the transport electrifications through barges, ferries in the region. We had looked at a number of such projects while at ADB, obviously increasing the renewable energy portfolio in the region and moving to a sustainable capital markets engagement. Working with the private sector in this space is a priority of ADB and IIB. I'm not going to speak for them, so I'm trying to illustrate how MCDF could work with large MDBs, but I do not speak for them. The AIB has an agreement with the International Renewable Energy Agency, RENA, that was signed this summer, also to increase cooperation on renewable energy penetration in the region. We're looking from the MCDF perspective at supporting this effort in terms of green investment frameworks when connectivity is demonstrated, also on digital and ICT aspects. We've been looking at assessing master plans, road projects, energy sector assessments in a number of ASEAN countries, Indonesia, Cambodia, Laos. I cannot go into the details of the projects yet because these projects are AIB projects and have not been yet, approved by us, but these are illustrations of the different things we're looking at. AIB has set for itself high connectivity targets as a matter of corporate policy, in addition to climate finance targets and to private sector targets as a share of the investments that they will represent by 2025. So it's, for instance, 50% of climate finance by 2025. So this has strong implications on the IB renewable energy portfolio. I think they've done 1.2 billion in just 5 years in renewables alone, not just in this region, that's global. They've also just announced at the annual meetings yesterday that AIB will be fully aligned with Paris alignment goals by January 2023. So there is a lot of dynamics going on, also on ADB, new initiative on decommissioning, coal-fired power plants in the region. You may have heard of this ETM mechanism that has taking us a bit away from the digitalization question. But if Pradeep joins this discussion, maybe he can pick up on these aspects. Just as a quick reaction from my side, again, I cannot speak for the MDBs. We work with them, and projects come from them, presented to the MCDF, and we will assist client countries in this region and other regions adopt higher standards as they relate to sustainability of the investments, to enhanced environmental, social standards, to climate-aligned investments in connectivity projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frederick, for your excellent comment. Actually, that we could have the one of our panel that who now joined us. I would like to that his presentation that so I would like to invite the Mr. Jagjit Sarin, Assistant Director General, Strategy International Solar Alliance. Mr. Sarin, that you have the floor. Thank you very much for joining us now.
Thank you, Mika. I hope I'm audible.
And yeah, you can speak, and then that we have your presentation now on the screen.
Well, I think it's a presentation from my colleagues from ADB, but I don't have a presentation. I would just make oral remarks if that's fine.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe as a good Asian, I should begin with an apology. Sorry for being late to join this panel, but I'm thrilled to be part of this. And thanks to Matt and other colleagues at UNESCAP for inviting International Solar Alliance. Let me begin by very, very briefly introducing to your audience what International Solar Alliance is and bring them up to speed on where this alliance is going. International Solar Alliance was established at Paris COP with President Macron, Prime Minister Modi, and other leaders coming together to bring a coalition of countries which are endowed with solar energy and a lot of technical potential to come together and create this platform of sharing experiences, committing to jointly mobilize $1 trillion in solar investments. Since then, this has grown into a multilateral institution. Now we have 80 countries which are backing this initiative. About 80 of them have formally ratified the ISA treaty framework, which binds them towards this collective target of $1,000 billion in solar investments by 2030. As this endeavor is moving forward at the first assembly, which is the governing body of International Solar Alliance, the presidency of ISA India, Honorable Prime Minister, laid out a vision in his speech at the inaugural session that sun never sets, which is a common fact, very obvious. But what he presented there is that why don't we use sun and the time difference across continents as a natural battery, essentially to connect various regions and use the power sources and demand centers connected through regional interconnectors. And all these interconnectors should be powered by renewable energy sources. He called it one sun, one world, one grid. This concept has evolved over the last few years. In 2020, we signed ISA, signed an MOU with the World Bank Group and Ministry of New and Renewable Energy India to do a techno-commercial study to realize this vision, what it would take, whether it's really a vision or it could be achieved, whether there are technical possibilities, what it would take in terms of cost, technology, bringing institutions together, and all the rest which is required for such a global vision to be realized. Parallelly, the effort was from the UK presidency of the COP on a green grids initiative, which is essentially greening the grids across the globe. You know, and Matt from UNESCAP has been leading this effort, Pan-Asia Pacific, you know, using the coordination platform of UN to bring various regional and sub-regional initiatives towards one common goal and expediting that process. So just fast forward at the COP in a couple of days on 2nd of November, Honorable Prime Minister Johnson and Honorable Prime Minister Modi would be jointly launching what is now called Green Grid Initiative, One Sun, One World, One Grid as a joint global initiative. It's backed by United States, France, Germany, African Union, Oman, and many other countries. At our assembly governing body on 20th of October, we presented a political declaration, what we called as One Sun Declaration, to get support from our 80 member countries. And this initiative got a resounding support. So at COP, you will see this initiative being launched with the support of more than 80 countries. Launched by leaders. But the idea is very simple, that if we are serious about energy transition, we need to push renewable energy at its core. And to help demand centers and production centers to connect, we need interconnectors. You know, in the region in Asia Pacific, we see a lot of new announcements coming from Singapore, Australia for this Interconnect. Indonesia announced big installation commitments for solar. And we see in the broader Asia Pacific, in West Asia, a project of interconnector launch between Saudi Arabia and Egypt. We organized a meeting between India, GCC countries for a potential interconnector under the One Sun, One World, One Grid umbrella. There, the GCC IEA chairman, he announced that, you know, such project is already taking shape. It's moving forward. They've signed a commitment. They've lined up the financing. You talk to financiers in India, they are very excited about India GCC Connect. Their technical analysis shows that it's possible, if even with 1.5 gigawatt capacity on both sides, to make it a commercial subsea link, while we are also exploring land routes. Essentially what I'm trying to suggest here is that now there is a lot of momentum around interconnecting regions to push for cross-border transfers of renewable electrons with the aim to expedite the energy transition if we're really serious about 2 degrees. We at ISA have joined hands with the UK government and another 80 countries to push this initiative. And we look forward to cooperation from Asian Development Bank, UNESCAP, and other partners on this panel and in your audience to make this a truly global initiative pushed by the region where we could walk the talk and bring energy transition to the speed it really deserves if you're really serious about 2 degrees. Matt, let me stop there. And Mika, thanks for giving me this opportunity. Maybe if there would be opportunity later, I would be happy to elaborate where the technical work is going and how we can collaborate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the great idea. Actually, that COP is going to start that within 2 days, and I'm really excited to hear that great idea. That actually that I will be physically in Glasgow, so I would like to see the kind of a huge enthusiasm about the green grid idea. Okay, let me get back to the panel discussion that we could have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 excellent speakers here. Maybe that I would like to go back to the question that we got in the chat box, that this is for everybody actually, and then that it's more kind of a broad question. To all speakers, in your opinion, what are the some of the lessons learned from managing the impact of pandemic on the energy system and the interconnection, especially, I think? That I will start with our first speaker, Benny, and Valerie, and Frederick, and Dr. Han, and then Jagjit, and then probably that Matthew will follow up with some comments.
Right, thank you, Mika. Maybe my short reaction on that, on the perspective on interconnectivity, that, I mean, due to the current situation, we experience the fluctuation or to some context, a reduction of the demand. Some countries also surplus generation. So this is something that should be manageable, be it in technical context or in economic context, if ASEAN countries is really interconnected with each other. So I look from this kind of perspective that also perhaps is also including the issue on, to some context, energy crisis that being experiencing by the countries in this region to some portion, that if ASEAN is also already establishing its interconnectivity, that we between the countries can collaborate to address this issue so that we can solve, maybe to some context, the rocketing price in Singapore, which the renewable energy price is coming at the affordable price from the other countries. So all the way the country is having more generation, then while the demand is slowing down or reduced because of the COVID or the pandemic impact, that can be exported. The countries may need energy in this context. But so this is the benefit that we can gain, and then something that we can manage if we can integrate it. Just echoed Valerie mentioned that the progress is very low in the 8 gigawatts for the last 20 or 30 years down the road, but we hope this is something that we can escalate it in the next few years so that we can optimize efforts, not only addressing on the current event, the pandemic, but when the economic is growing, we can provide the electricity and energy in the less cost compared to what we have today. I stop here. Thank you, Mika.
Thank you. Valerie, do you have any comments or you would like to pass it?
Yeah, so I guess one of the challenges and one of the shock that came through the system during the pandemic was all the government, and you know, for interconnectivity projects, it's a lot of government and regulators, ministries needs to be involved. So I think one of the effects we see is that lots of decision making and a lot of attention was diverted away from this so-called less critical, more long-term kind of projects. So I think that was one thing that was quite stark to us. But I feel it's a problem that it can solve itself in the sense that we've been through, one of the worst, in our lifetimes probably, one of the rudest shock to our system, to our daily lives, even to daily interactions and stuff like that. So I think this is all well built in, and as long as every country and region has a resilient power system plan, I think it can withstand this kind of shocks in the future. I think the second one, obviously, what the COVID-19 pandemic really had a very bad effect on was the supply chain. So this doesn't really have much to do per se with the regional interconnectivity, but more of the individual projects, whether it's building substations or just a solar farm or that wind turbine farm. So, the delay in the supply chain and the backlog was quite huge last year. So, the plans don't go as fast as they'd like to. And with that, I think for developers and for governments, it's really to have a very resilient ecosystem of suppliers, not too reliant on one country or a company to build up that kind of resiliency in the supply chain so that, again, from a planning perspective, projects can still be pushed out, the megawatts in renewable energy can still be achieved to achieve those sustainability goals. And then the interconnection will just organically come true. So that's all I have to say on this topic. Thank you, Mika.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. And then Frederick.
Yes, just to pick up on what Valerie was saying, that AIB has just issued this report on greening infrastructure and global value chains, and the implications for the region and lessons learned from the pandemic at different loopholes that came to the forefront in the past 2 years. There's also going to be on MDB side a lot of build back better type of engagements with the fiscal push and money available in terms of aligning investments in the recovery in a more low carbon pathway. A number of these have already been proposed. The ADB has an ASEAN level green finance catalytic facility that built on the ASEAN Infrastructure Fund and built a green finance window under it with a number of sovereign co-financiers applying higher standards to green investments, a taxonomy inspired from the EU there, looking also at green recovery programs supported by the Green Climate Fund. The facility is now 1.7 billion, I think, including 300 million on the green recovery. And this will largely be injected into renewable energy, green power systems. It's infrastructure, but it's going to be a large share in energy. It's also looking at innovation on the financial side, so looking at a blended finance project, bringing in the private sector, catalyzing institutional, commercial, private investors through the use of sovereign money. That's the sovereign part of the MDBs, but through their private sector operations also. PSOD, the private sector operations department of ADB, has been very active in the Southeast Asian region in piloting reversed auctions for solar power plants and replicating these models through innovative blended finance propositions is taking center stage. And I think, from the strategic point of view, all these players are repositioning themselves in the build back better type of strategic approach. So there's a lot of this. There's also a lot of talk on debt sustainability and swaps and readjusting debt for a number of the poor, most affected players in the region. So it's just as a quick reaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Han.
Thank you, Mika. It's a big event for the whole world of the COVID-19. I think we have some lessons learned from this past 2 years. Firstly, the Earth has a lot of uncertainty in front of us, we should do it enough preparation for future, but not only think about the current condition and situation. Second is we should go together. No one can skip and avoid for this kind of global thing, So back to the interconnection topic, I have two comments. One is, things we are talking the interconnection and energy transition, more and more renewable will put into the system. So we have more stakeholders, have more factors. For example, the meteorological situation will become more important to the energy and the power system. So it should be a comprehensive planning and operating in the future. Second thing is for the market, when we interconnect each other, no matter how big for the amount for the interconnection, but a bigger market and the bigger allocation area will become into the service. So in that time, it should have a very coordinated way to deal with this market, to exchange the benefit and the cost, as well as different resources, and to put together with low cost for the whole Asia area. So that's my comments, and I'm stopped here. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sorin, do you have any comments on the pandemic that we experienced?
Sure, thanks, Mika. Let me pick up from where Dr. Han left. And I completely agree with him that, while for a brief period, it seemed that, interconnections would be all shut down, COVID restrictions came in and all that, but suddenly everybody realized that, interconnections are only going to grow. COVID has just shown a very brief trailer of what climate impacts can bring to humanity. So I think at a fairly senior level among politicians and bureaucrats, there is a grave realization that we need to get double serious about our response to climate change. Linking to what Frederick said, in terms of MDB's response, in terms of IMF response and other bilateral financial institutions, there has been a ramp up in announcements of more green financing coming towards energy transition, renewable investments, grid optimization, grid modernization, greening the grids, and interconnections. In the Energy Transition Council, which was formed by the UK presidency of the COP, there was a concerted effort led by Green Climate Fund to work with everyone to see how much investments is flowing currently in greening the grids, interconnections and all, and where we want to go. And that report would again be released at COP with a view that more investments would be pushed towards interconnections and greening the grids. So, at our end at International Solar Alliance, we are much more hopeful that while there was initial kind of a dampening effect on interconnections discussions, these things have just gotten more pace, wind in their sail. And I think COP would be a pivotal moment in pushing interconnections as far as electron transfers, cross-border transfers are concerned. And with initiatives like GetGo and ours working together potentially in future, I think we have a lot to push here. And I bring to this for a lot of optimistic message along with Dr. Han and Frederick. Thanks.
Thank you. Mashuda, do you have any comment to follow up?
Those comments were all really excellent, and I don't think I have too much more to add. Maybe I'll just make three small points. The first one thing I took away from the pandemic is when it comes to the short-term demand, how much of our emissions are baked in, right? So we saw a quick drop-off in demand at the very beginning of the pandemic because, of course, change in economic activity, but not a very significant decline in emissions relative to that. And that, to me, shows that we still have a lot of work to do to get the emissions out of our energy system, but also how critical the energy system is to our day-to-day life. So we need it. Even in the face of a pandemic, electricity became maybe more important than ever, powering our cold chains for vaccines, powering our daily lives to get our work up, also powering our IT systems so we can all work from our homes. In terms of the recovery, the packages, I think one thing we saw is that they were not green enough. This has been said again and by many others, but I think it's worth emphasizing that we need to do more to ensure that when we reinvest in our economies, that they are focused on green investments. But that means also more long-term thinking. We shouldn't just rely on the short-term responses. We need to think more concretely about how long-term financing can be driven towards green investments. And the last thing I'll say is, right now we're facing a bit of a shock from the recovery. The recovery has been going better than anyone expected, which is great news for us globally. But it also means that now we're facing higher prices for natural gas, higher prices for coal, higher prices for electricity as a result of that, and also more competition for resources. And so I think that, I've seen commentary that suggests that this is therefore a reason why we should maybe slow down in renewables, but I think the opposite is true. I think the lesson here is we need to double down. I saw some interesting commentary from Tim Gould, from the chief economist of the IEA, noting that if you look at the decline in investments in fossil infrastructure over the past few years, that's been consistent with a 1.5 degree scenario, which is good news, but we're not seeing the consistent investment on the green side. So what we need is not to shift back towards financing for fossil investments, but to double down on financing for renewables and in the infrastructure needed to deploy renewables. If we can get that up, then we're actually going to be on track to meet our goals. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much with that very good comments that I totally agree with you that we have to accelerate the renewable. Renewable is the only energy that we could grow that in the past several years. Okay, so we have 10 minutes. And then that I would like to ask the all speakers about one question. What is your idea, the most important one step that we immediately take to realize that green, renewable interconnection that in ASEAN region? What is the most important one step that we need to take that immediately? Can I start with Benny? And then, Frederick, Valerie, Dr. Han, and then Mr. Xiaolin. And maybe that we would have the final comment from Mashu.
Okay. I hope I've not crossed the line by saying this, but immediate action is really a translation of the political commitment on this initiative. I mean, example from the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore is really, for us, is really a solid example where the government is taking a lead to address the issue. And then consider it in a very short time that it has been translated into a great success. As indicated earlier, a significant amount is being created. What has happened on the first day of the CU with announcement of the many major projects where the SEMCOP is also part of it, is also a significant indication how the leadership from the political side is really driving it. I mean, technical issue, economic issue, something can be follow and then something that can be work together, but it's really an effort on that point of view. I hope I not cross the line asking my leaders to kind of that statement. Thank you, Mika.
Thank you very much. I totally agree. My personal Japanese point of view that we need a political leadership of the country. Okay, so Frederick, please.
Oh, I agree on the last point on the political will, also on the coordination of the governance issues, both national in the region and the regional, through the regional coordination bodies, ASEAN ESCAP. And I would think potentially the importance of private sector, unleashing private sector investments into renewables through climate-aligned, obviously, taxonomies, de-risking innovative technologies with a blended finance type of financial engineering, adopting, regional coordination also for the grid to follow the uptake of renewables and the concomitant decommissioning of coal. So I'd just stress that point, private sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valerie.
So again, obviously, I don't want to steal Benny's answer, but obviously, the government coming together and the whole political will, the theme of political will is very important. But I would say a more very functional one, after, the governments can talk and stuff, but setting deadlines really help. Setting a timeline, setting I need to reach a certain milestone by X date. I think this is something that would really help push the agenda of regional connectivity forward. If not, we might see a very slow progress like what we see in the past 2 decades. It's just, putting really, really solid deadlines down and corporates, commercial governments all going behind it because, hey, it's a public commitment and we need to show the world that we can do it. So I would say if I want to choose my answer, that would be setting deadlines. That's the one practical thing that we can do all together. Thank you, Mika.
Thank you very much. And then Dr. Han.
Yeah, I want to see the political enhancing the political will as also, it's a very critical direction and also very, very important flag for all the stakeholders. Without this, we can't move forward or move very slowly. Second thing is, right now, looks like there is a very high, very strong support from private sector. It's good to enhance the utilization of the resources and the outputs from private sector to increase the probability for government increase their political will. My last comment, but not but is the most important is the UN system. Include the UNESCAP should play more important role and supported by all the governments to be the best coordinator. Between the governments, between the government and private sector, and between private sector. So that's my comment. Thank you, Mika.
Thank you very much. And then Jaspreet, please.
Well, Mika speaking almost at the end makes my job very easy. I can agree with everything that has been said. But let me underline what Valerie said. Setting these deadlines, based on all our experiences, we could say it takes about 2-3 years to get all the permits, permissions, get regulatory this and that. And it takes about 2-3 years to get the project going, implementation, if you're thinking of long HVDC lines or subsea cables. And we are already in 2022, almost there. And we have this decade if we are really serious about energy transition investments. So we have to start now. So I think immediate action, urgency of action, and setting strict deadlines, as Valerie was saying. I think we now have the political commitment. Private sector is ready, and I think MDBs are ready to bring the risk capital. Technology is there, whether these are subsea HVDC cables or on land cables. So we just need to now push, create urgency, and set deadlines. That's where I would put my money. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And then that we are coming to the end of the session, I just would like to have the Matthew's comment on the one step. And then also, some are already indicated, like Dr. Han that mentioned. What is the role of regional institutions like UNESCAP in supporting connectivity projects in Asia? And how do you see things moving forward in the coming years? And then please give the final comments. And then before I asked Matthew to take over the session, I would like to just convey the apologies from Pradeep, who cannot join our session. He had an immediate COP meeting that he cannot avoid to, escape. So he will not be, he was not be able to join our session. So Matthew, you have the floor, and then giving us the final comment as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mika. And thank you to all of the speakers. Let me just start by saying that this is really an excellent conversation. I got a lot out of it. I hope you did as well. I'm sure the audience did. On the one point, I think it's already been well said, but it's worth emphasizing. The political will and setting targets, I agree. Those are really two key points. As Jajik just said, time is not on our side. We really need to move forward, but you can't move forward unless there is political alignment, if there's social support, if there's stakeholder support. And that means bringing everyone together and really trying to push us all in the right direction. And I think this is where ESCAP is trying to play a role. We are a regional institution, so we are privileged in being able to work with a broad range of countries and stakeholders. We're also a relatively small institution in terms of our capacity. So we really see ourselves as trying to be an accelerator of initiatives, to be a catalyst for change, to be an organization that tries to support these efforts that as they exist to help move them forward more quickly, to improve the sustainability, to improve the capacity of stakeholders to deliver them. And it's really only through working with stakeholders like the people in the room today, the virtual room today, representing private sector, financing, the thought leaders, think tanks, et cetera. This is everyone we need, plus everyone who's not able to be in this conversation today. We all have to work together on this. And so, one thing I'll say, as maybe a final thought, is I feel like we're really in an inflection point moment when it comes to sustainable connectivity. I've been talking about this for many years. I know everyone in this room has been talking about this for many years, but I've seen a real change in the conversation where now this topic is appearing in more and more contexts and being said by more and more people. I remember when I first started working in this industry, talking about solar, wind, renewables, and a lot of the conversations were about, oh, that's interesting, but it's not there yet, right? It's still just a marginal technology. And now here we are in 2021, and it is the default investment choice around the world. Solar, wind, it's not a question of whether we're going to build it, it's a question of how quickly we can build it and who can benefit from it fast. I think we're seeing the same type of conversation now occurring with connectivity, where before it was a secondary consideration and now it's more of a primary consideration. And that's evidenced by the fact that, as was mentioned a couple of times, next week at COP, we have initiatives being launched that explicitly focus on this. We have International Solar Alliance and GuideCo devoting their energy to supporting these initiatives, not just at the regional level, but at the global level. We'll have high-level participation next week. We have presidents and leaders participating in the launch event, ministers participating in the launch event. We have a really excellent momentum, I think, building around this topic. And that's where I want things to keep going. I want to keep momentum going. I want to build on that momentum. I want to build this conversation, build this community of stakeholders, get everyone to the same table so we can all work together more actively, more sustainably, and towards our common goals of addressing climate change and our broader sustainable development challenges. I'm looking at the clock. I see we're down to the last moment, so I will leave it there. Thank you again to all the speakers. Again, you were excellent. Thank you to the people who asked questions in the chat box. We really appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing you all, hopefully in person in the near future and next year at CU 2022. In the meantime, have a good rest of your days. Goodbye all.